Yaps. It's in the name. All right, things are getting weird over here in America. In New York, there's more than likely going to be its first Muslim mayor. I don't know how you guys feel about that. To be honest, I don't know how I feel about that. But New York City mayoral candidate Mamdani on how he deals with the haters, the critics, and the skeptics. I haven't heard too much of this guy. I've heard him say some crazy stuff online, but let's see what he does on TV, huh?
Was Zohran Mamdani.
We're gonna have to do
I just
research
want
on
to
this guy.
continue
I
the
have no idea
conversation we
anything
were
on
having
him.
before the break, because Senator Bernie Sanders was asked about what I'm just going to call non-endorsements from people like Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer today, and I just want to play what he had to say.
We saw the Democratic leaders have put out statements that were nice and kind, but not necessarily outright endorsements. Is it time for Democratic leaders to get fully behind him?
Well, the Democratic leadership, sadly, too often is tied to the billionaire class and their campaign contributions. What the Democratic leadership has got to do is make a choice. Which side are you on?
He seems to be saying
The side should always be America. You should always be Team America and the American people. That's it.
But I want to hear what you have
And
to
if you're a New York mayor, you should be specifically for the New York people and New Yorkers.
say about it, that it's time for choosing in the Democratic Party, that you have to decide what side you're on, and not endorsing is choosing on the side of billionaires. But do you see it that way? How do you see it?
Bernie's just old now.
I think what we are seeing New Yorkers face
And
a
jaded.
choice of, especially over the course of this primary election, was whether they wanted a candidate and a campaign of the past that was funded in the same way that so many campaigns have been, which is by the very billionaires and corporations that I am looking to tax to make the city affordable for each and every New Yorker. And we've seen the people of New York City make their choice. We've seen them make that choice.
Yes, tax the people who are making the most money and giving back the most jobs. I don't know if that's the smartest idea.
In a manner that has little precedent in recent years. And ultimately, that's the choice that I'm most excited about.
I know you were working to expand your coalition because you are being very careful, which you are running in a general election, and I understand that. So I want to ask you about one aspect of that, because you're running to be the mayor of the city with the largest population of Jewish people outside of Israel and the world. And at a time, which I know you know because you've addressed this before, when there's been a significant uptick in anti-Semitic rhetoric and hate crimes against Jews, it's very scary to be a Jewish American right now. And you've been criticized by a number of Jewish leaders, as well as the U.S. Holocaust Museum, for your defense of the phrase globalize the Intifada. Last night in your speech, you alluded, so I know this is on your mind, you alluded to concerns from the Jewish community, even vowing to reach further to understand the perspectives of those whom you disagree. So for Jewish New Yorkers, I mean, this is sort of the first day. The race hasn't been called, but you did give a speech last night claiming victory, and your opponent did concede. For Jewish voters who are watching right now, who are scared, who aren't sure if you can effectively represent them, what's your message to them tonight?
My message is that I am looking to lead this entire city, to represent each and every New Yorker. And that representation is not contingent on whether or not someone votes for me or someone agrees with me, because the responsibility of a leader is to reach out to all 8.5 million people who call this city their home. And I know that Jewish New Yorkers, like Jewish Americans, are fearful in this moment of anti-Semitism. They're fearful, especially after the horrific attacks that we saw in Washington, D.C. and in Boulder, Colorado. And they're fearful also in conversations that I have heard myself about life in this city. I spoke to a Jewish man in Williamsburg not too many weeks ago who told me about the fact that he now locks the door that he used to close, that he used to keep open for years because of a fear of who may come in. I spoke to a friend of mine after October 7th who told me about going to his synagogue for Shabbat services and hearing the door open behind him and turning around with a tremor going up his back, not knowing who was walking in and what they wished for them. And ultimately, it's through the conversations I've had with Jewish New Yorkers that I have developed a proposal for the Department of Community Safety that would include an 800% increase in funding for hate crime prevention programs. Because ultimately, we cannot simply say that anti-Semitism has no home in this city or no place in this country. We have to do more than talk about it.
It's a lot of money going to a program that I
do through this funding.
I don't know
and
if
through
it
this
actually
commitment.
works.
We will root out bigotry across the 5 boroughs.
As you're looking to kind of appeal to people or connect with people who are skeptical, what does that look like for you over the next couple of months to the members of the Jewish community, to some of these leaders who have been critical? What should they expect and anticipate from you?
They should expect my continuing to reach out, most especially to those who are concerned or who do disagree, because ultimately in politics too often.
One thing, even though I may not, there's something that I don't trust. There's a red flag coming up in the back of my head. There's something to be said about a young guy who wants to come in and lead a state, be a mayor. We need to get rid of these people who are 65, 75, 80 years old, who are in government. They are so out of touch with modern day and the modern day struggles that it's very hard to implement changes that people are really going to feel, because they're only making changes for the people in the nursing home. Or at least that's where their mindset is at. When they're thinking of the average American, they're not thinking of the young buck anymore. And if they are, they're thinking of their son or daughter, which at that age is still going to be 40, 50, 60 years old. You know what I'm saying? So we need youth in leadership and in government positions. So even though I don't disagree with him, I do like the fact that this is a young guy who doesn't necessarily sound like a politician. Like AOC, Alexandria Cortez, whatever. She's a young person, but sounds like a politician. This is a young guy who doesn't sound like a politician.
Surround yourself only with those that are quickest to say yes or quickest to already be in the same place as you, when in fact we have to be able to navigate that disagreement and that tension. And I often think about the words of a previous mayor, Mayor Koch, who said that if you agree with me on 9 out of 12 issues, vote for me. 12 out of 12, see a psychiatrist. And I think of an elder Jewish woman who came up to me at B'nai Jeshurun,
That's smart.
a synagogue on the Upper
That's
West
a
Side
healthy-
many
that's
months
a healthy
ago
approach
after a
on that.
Democratic club forum, who whispered in my ear, I disagree with you on one issue. I'm pretty sure you know which one it is, but I agree with you on the others, and I'm going to be ranking you. And I think that ability to understand that even in disagreement, it's still rooted in a shared sense of humanity.
That's, you know what, I really like that answer, because there's so many people who look at, like somebody and they have 8 things in common with them, but 2 things are not, and they really can't stand it. So they just focus on that instead of the other things. Like, yes, those are real and present. You can have a conversation on it, but don't take it so personally, like it's just another human being on how they think. We are not our thoughts. We're just the sum of all of our actions, the good and the bad.
That is something that makes this city great, and that is something that I will deliver as the next mayor of this city.
You're going to be dealing with tremendous attacks from MAGA Republicans. We've already seen that over the last 24 hours, including from Stephen Miller, Elise Stefanik, the NRCC. They're already trying to run an Islamophobic campaign against you, which I will just note, and you've lived this, but for people who are just tuning in, is a continuation of some of the tactics that we saw during the primary, but it's going to come tenfold. I know you know that, but how are you going to handle that personally?
It's sad in that in one sense it's unsurprising, and in another it is still deeply disappointing to see what politics has become in this moment. To have to deal with regular death threats where I'm told that someone is going to blow up my car and is going to kill me and my family and the people that I love. And
Yeah, it's
I've
not
spoken
okay
to
for
many
me to
Muslims
decide,
across the
right or
city
left, middle,
who
wherever
have
you're at.
shared that their
No one should be
fear of
making
having
death
to be
threats.
essentially branded a terrorist just by living in public life is one that keeps them preferring life in the shadows, life outside of that specter. And this is not the way that we can have our city be. It's not the way that we can have our country be. This has to be a place where we understand the mutual belonging of each and every person here. And I'm lucky to have friends and family that keep me moving through this. I'm lucky that I'm able, through my campaign, to have security and also to have the assistance of the NYPD in both investigating these threats and ensuring that I have the same public safety that each and every New Yorker deserves.
New York, as you well know better than anyone, you've probably had food from every single culture in New York, so there's that. But it is a very diverse city. There's a huge Muslim American population in New York City as well. You would be, if you're elected, and you've got a ways to go here, but the first Muslim American mayor of New York City. What does that mean to you?
It means a lot. I think about my grandmother Kulsum and my grandfather Yusuf and how they taught me from a young age that to be a good Muslim is to be a good person. It's to help those in need and harm no one. And ultimately, I've sought to do that over the course of my life, and especially in a time when the mere mention of being Muslim is seen as if it is a slur. It is.
I'm not going to lie, in today's day and age, especially in the South where Christianity reigns supreme, saying that somebody is openly a Muslim is definitely it should not be a red flag, but so many people take it as a red flag. But if that is what being, with their eyes, what a good Muslim is, it's just validating what I've said in the past, which is that all religions ultimately trying to make you a good human being by giving back and not judging others and not hurting others, you know? Now, I think it's a little hypocritical from a lot of different angles, but
Is also an opportunity
I'll
for
hold my
me
tongue.
to introduce the fact that being Muslim is like being a member of any other faith. It is believing and belonging in a notion of equality and in solidarity. And I know that it is so meaningful for the million Muslims that call New York City their home to see the fact that representation can be something that exists not just across the 5 boroughs, but also in City Hall.
Saram Mamdani, I hope for people watching who are just meeting you, who are thinking about running for office, think it's not possible, think they can't connect with their communities or don't know how to do it, whether they agree with you on everything or not. They don't have to, that they've found some inspiration in your story. It certainly has been for many people. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always
No, I'll stand back on what I said. I like the fact, I'll be curious. I want to see like what some of his like actual politics are. But I like seeing a young guy who doesn't sound like a politician, who you know, who wants to lead everybody from, you know, the majority to the minority. So we're gonna be following up on that. The weekend's gonna be crazy, so I'm gonna try to crank out as much content as I can. And as you can see, I'm trying to get my shoulder to recover. I'm a little sore, but I'm about to head to the gym. So with that said, make somebody laugh today, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.